It's 1 o'clock. It is the best hour of your week. Tipping points and puzzle pieces. Man, have I missed that intro music. So glad that you can join us today. We're going to have a great show for you as we always do. I've actually been looking forward to this show because today we go over the manifesto. So I'm super excited. I cannot wait. So I don't want to waste any more time. We've got an hour because it's the best hour of your day. Let's go ahead and bring forward Mark Boatwright Frost. You can call him MBF.
Hey,
How you doing there?
I'm doing good. Yourself?
You know what? I'm doing fantastic. I just finished up doing a show. I haven't done a podcast in I don't know how long. So, did an hour and a half podcast on resolutions and goal setting, and it was great.
Awesome. Yeah, I saw you got a new like on that one too. I just saw it coming across Facebook.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, actually, good news, bad news about being admins on people's pages is I get everything. So it's like, oh, I've got 43 messages. I better go look. Oh, wait, no, that's for this. That's for that. That's for that.
Wow. We just hit 40,000 views 2 days ago.
Woo!
40,000. That's a lot of views here in little old Kitsap County.
Yep. So a couple of quick announcements. One is, yes, we're going to go over the manifesto, but I thought the appropriate title for this show is Why Me?
Why me? Okay.
Why me? Why me? Why is it me who's got to fix it? Why isn't it, congressmen or senators or nonprofits or corporations? Why is it me that has to fix this shit? Because it's really what the manifesto is about, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, it's like, oh, why not me? But I digress.
Yes. Well, there you go. Yeah. So the other thing is that I've actually planned out the next two shows.
Okay.
So we have themes for the next two shows as well.
Nice.
And so I take it you've read the manifesto now?
I
Or
have.
Okay. So what was your thoughts on it? I kind of want to get you cold before we talk about this.
Ooh, okay. So I'm gonna keep there's two separate thoughts, right? I'm gonna save
Okay.
the thoughts and the critique for just you and I.
Okay.
And then I'm gonna save and then I'll provide the input that is for public consumption here.
Okay.
So first and foremost, you need to get a full applause there. When you folks get access to it, understand that putting together just even random thoughts takes time and effort. Putting together something that is coherent, that is connected, that covers the gambit thoroughly is a very difficult thing to do. And while many of us have these own goals to do those types of things, very few of us ever embark on starting, let alone completing it. So first and foremost, applause and recognition for that. That's a tremendous output there. Now, the other thing that I would say is this. These are some of the things so there's Marwan, there's Gather Together, Grow Together, there's the Conduit, there's, Roseco and me being the president of Resilient Ecosystems. There's, Mark and Marwan. And so there's all these different dynamics that are going on. And as I shared with many of you, what intrigued me about Roseco was the future, right? And forward thinking and understanding that we need to do some things now. And that in a lot of ways, Roseco is the metaphoric sign sandwich in Die Hard with Samuel L. Jackson saying, the end is nigh, right? And trying to wake folks up and saying, hey, we've got to come together and make these changes now. We can't wait. as you said, you can't wait for a nonprofit, you can't wait for the government, you can't wait for someone else to do it. Why me? It's got to be you. We have to do it. And you know
Well,
that
we
one of
have
my
to do it together.
yeah, we have to do it together. One of my major critiques of you is providing scaffolding for people, right? That people don't function well off of esoteric ideas that are very nebulous and bring your puzzle piece and that's how it'll work and it'll be great. This gives some of that scaffolding on saying, hey, here's water for all, power for all, housing for all, healthcare for all, food for all. How do these things, all of these things are important? Why are they important? What are the catalysts that are happening in the world today? And how is that impact on us locally, nationally, and globally? And how do all of those things press down on us? How can we press outward and make the change if we the people decide to come together, right? That's
Yeah. You're breaking up a little bit, so I'm wondering
Oh, I might have hit
whether.
the mic. Am I better now?
Yeah, you're better now. Okay.
Sorry, I probably just scooted. I got a little excited. Sorry about that.
Okay.
But how those pieces, both locally, nationally, and globally, impact us internally, but then how we can turn that back around and impact out in the other direction and how important that is. But again, you know, one of my biggest critiques is the scaffolding that people don't know where to start. They don't know, you know, I might want to do something. I don't know what knowledge, skill, or ability, what talent do I have that I can bring to the table. And so there's this fear and this hesitancy, and people do want it written down for them. Okay, step one, step two, step three. And while this is not necessarily that, it is some scaffolding to say, hey, these are the critical issues and these are the things that we need to work on now, not only for our personal generation now, but for our children, our grandchildren, and further down the road, right? Because otherwise, what's the point? What's the point of it all, right? If you're like, you know what, I'm just gonna use the hell out of the planet and get what I can get, and hey, my children will just have to deal with it. And it doesn't matter how crappy the world is when I'm gone because I'm not here. And if my children have children, well, you know, that's on them. You know, I'm not here. So those things are important. So that those are my initial thoughts on that.
So, did it scare the hell out of you?
No, because for you know we've known each other for what, a year and a half now. Are we going on a
Well,
year and a half?
2 years.
So there was nothing new in there for me. But again, I'm in it. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So there really shouldn't be. Um, but that would go for my private critique later because there's
Yeah.
some things that I want to be able to build from and then to also articulate and speak from, especially should I, you know, win the election as city council, because I really do want to steer, you know, the things that Rezeco is talking about in while I'm in that position, right? It's a short time, you know, maybe I'm only there for 2 years, but in those 2 years, we have to look at Cascadia Rising. We have to look at resiliency. We have to look at the fact that we're going to be in trouble on this peninsula, right? They're talking about paving the highway coming in, and Rob was telling me if they cut off both exits, they may make it to where if you're coming from Port Orchard, you're going to have to go to Silverdale to get back into Bremerton, right?
Yeah.
But think about how easy it is to cut us off from resources and access, right? And a lot of people aren't thinking about that. And I get it. Life is hard and we're struggling just to survive, but we still have to keep one eye on the future while we're trying to tread water today and look out for the sharks that are in the water with us now.
Yeah. So let's make this really personal, really quickly, because
Sure.
I've been thinking about this lately. And I'm going to start off with a little humor. Are you familiar with the musical The Music Man?
I've heard of it, but don't know if I've ever seen it.
Okay, so that's the response I have. You know, being an old fart, I remember a lot of things and have a lot of reference points that people in generations even close to mine have never seen or heard of.
Hmm.
And so I have to be careful about that. But I put something on my Facebook page that I thought was very funny. And people basically didn't react to it because I realized most people don't know what I'm talking about. So I took the song from the Music Man about the Wells Fargo wagon coming down the street, bringing something for me, and how everybody gets really excited when the Wells Fargo wagon comes because it could be raisins from Fresno, it could be salmon from Seattle, It could be anything. And this is taking place in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Okay, in River
Wow.
City,
Okay.
Iowa. So the Wells Fargo wagon was the way things shipped to you. So I changed the words to be the Amazon van is coming down the street because we have the same kind of excitement when Amazon shows up with the stuff we ordered,
Yeah.
right? So think about suddenly, I want you to think for a moment about what we buy locally that is made locally,
Ooh.
that is provided locally, that we can get reliably locally.
I would say aside from, some of the things from our farmers markets, not too much.
So if we were going to try and survive something like Cascadia Rising, where the peninsula is cut off, there's nothing here after 2 days. Everything, the markets will be emptied, the food will be gone. There is nothing here that is provided locally. And we don't have a base of manufacturing for local supply. Just think about that for a minute.
Yeah, it's a like I said, it's one of the big selling points for me in this particular work.
So yeah, I get pissy sometimes because I need to get something, and I can't go to the local Fred Meyer. I can't go to the Walmart. I can't go to Target. I can't go to any of the stores and find it, and I have to go to Amazon because they just don't have it locally. Lowe's is one of my favorite examples of this. I go to Lowe's. I've probably been to Lowe's 10 times this year. I have not yet found the single thing that I was looking for.
Wow.
So I walk in there, I wander around, and I leave without buying anything. But I go to McClendon's Hardware and I can get it right away. But most of the time, I end up ordering it from Amazon or someplace else.
See, that's my issue with the lack of Radio Shack.
Yeah,
Now that I'm into all these electronics and podcasting, I need all of these specialty wires and cables, and you
you can't
know,
get them. I
Radio
have
Shack was right down the street, and it was fantastic, and now it's gone.
I have a Canon camera that was given to me, and it needs some repair work. There is not a camera repair shop in Kitsap County after COVID.
Mm.
If I want to get my camera fixed, I have to send it to the East Coast, have them tell me what's wrong with it, and either ship it back, and I have to pay shipping both ways, and then I have to pay for repairs if they can repair it. The choice of people repairing that or getting help for this disappeared during COVID.
Well, not only that, but everything is disposable now, right?
Yep.
They literally build products with failure dates in it instead of making it built to last. Like, okay, my computer's going to fail in about 18 months. It's going to start running crappy. This car is going to start breaking down in about a couple of years, and like clockwork. And I don't remember when it was. It might have been like maybe 15 years ago where that started to happen. Maybe it was like during
30.
the Windows 7
It
era.
was actually about 30 years ago.
Was it 30 years?
Yeah,
Well,
and that's when manufacturing started talking about planned obsolescence.
so I'd been too young to
Yeah.
I'd only been 20, so I wouldn't have been paying attention to it then. But around 25, hitting 30, then it would start to be, man, I used to have this forever. Now I need a new iPhone next year. Really?
Yeah, I have a Craftsman drill that's 50 years old that works just fine.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a Craftsman drill from about 20 years ago that works fine. I haven't bought a new drill since, but they don't like you to do that. They want you to buy a new drill every couple of years. Every year would be better for them. The trouble is that, let's do some math. Is the economy robust enough to allow us to replace our car every 3 years, every 18 months, the myth of the capitalistic economy requires an ever expanding base of further and further purchases. That means money has to be flowing through the economy. Money hasn't been flowing through the economy for almost a decade. It's been going up to the top. I mean, you hear Bernie Sanders scream about it, but it's just math. I mean, no matter what you think about Bernie, it's math. The money is going to the top 10% all the time, and there's not enough money flowing through the economy. So this Saturday, I'm shifting gears just a little bit. And speaking of Amazon, I have a package coming in from Amazon today that has 2 games of Jenga.
Of Jenga.
Jenga. Now, you're familiar with Jenga?
I am.
Okay, so essentially, for those who don't know Jenga, it's wooden blocks that are stacked up in a tower, and the game is for you to pull a block out, and not have it collapse.
You see these hands?
Uh huh.
Not the greatest Jenga player.
Well, this is a special game, and we're going to be playing it on Saturday at G2 for the workshop,
Oh,
because we're going to
nice.
be talking about the economy.
Mm-hmm.
And the top of it is going to be blocks that have word. All of them are going to have words on them, but the blocks at the top are going to have happy words. As you get further down, you're going to have things that have happened historically that have rocked the economy and how it's been built upon as you get closer and closer to the bottom until it's impossible for it not to collapse. Is that a metaphor for you for what we're talking about?
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
So on the top, we're going to be talking about post World War II. And I could go back further, but I'm going to start there because it's easy. You
Mm-hmm.
know that golden age that the conservatives always talk about when they're not talking about wanting, white supremacy coming back. They're talking about the populace of the white age, of the golden age. You know what that was really from?
What's that from?
Post-war taxes. After World War II, where we were taxing corporations up to 90% of their profits, and wealthy people up to 90% of the profits to support the war effort, those taxes stayed in place until the 1960s.
Really?
And we built our entire infrastructure in this country on those taxes. All the highways, all of the dams, all of the electrical infrastructure. Remember back when electricity was part of the government provided electricity before we deregulated and decentralized and made it a privately held thing? Well, all of those are actually Jenga blocks. And we talk with the ones at the top. It says, you know, a man could go buy, or in this case, a man could go buy a house with his income as a worker and have a home for him and his family. His wife could stay home with the child. Now, again, for those of you getting all up and wrapped up in everything with me saying man and all of that, we're talking cultural context of the 1950s. All right. We're not talking about cultural context of today. Keep it in context. Um,
We're all intellectually honest here. We got a
yeah.
smart crowd.
So we had the ability to have a one income cover the entire family and have the nuclear family. That was the idea that we're still trying to sell today, but the parameters of that disappeared in the 1970s. All right. So until the 1960s, we had a booming economy. Jobs were readily available, either infrastructure projects or growing corporations, and everyone was thriving. Even the corporations who were being heavily taxed were thriving and hiring people and growing. And then we repealed those taxes and rocked the economy completely. In the 1970s, the financial institutions realized that they couldn't continue with the one person qualifying for the buying a house. So they changed the rules in the 70s so that it required two people to qualify for a home because the inflation of the housing had started to happen because there wasn't the wealth going on, the wealth generation going on. So we moved into that. And then Nixon took us off the gold standard, which means our dollars were no longer backed by the gold in Fort Knox. So how does that all tie together? Well, then they said that our jobs were backed by manufacturing. And here the shell game begins. Shell game where you have three cups and a pea under one, and the pea keeps moving, and you have to guess which one it's under. So we were told that our manufacturing capability in this country was what backed our dollar. So move forward to the Reagan years in the 1980s, and I'm skipping a bunch of stuff in the middle here. But skip to the Reagan years where we allowed jobs to be offshored, and predominantly our manufacturing moved to other countries because our regulations about safety and environment, which was put in place by Nixon, were costing corporations a lot of money to manufacture because they had to do it safely and they had to retool things, and they didn't want to do that, so they went to China. So remember, we live on one planet. I just want in the back of your mind thinking about it doesn't matter what country we're turning dirty and destroying, it affects everybody on the planet. Okay, just keep that in mind. But we offshored those jobs. So if the money was backed, if our money was backed by our manufacturing capability, and we offshored all of our manufacturing, what is our money backed by now? Well, the statement was service. Our ability to provide service was what it was. And now, while there's still, you can't offshore your auto mechanic, you can't offshore your waitress. These are not, well, auto mechanic is, but these are not high quality jobs.
Right.
And at the same time, we're soft selling the blue collar work and pushing everybody into college to get a degree in white collar business management and such. And we don't want our kids to be blue collar workers because it's dirty and everything else. Even though there's good money jobs and extraordinarily necessary, we started shifting our investment into 4 year to 8 year degrees and inflating the degrees to teach our kids how to be business managers so they can work at McDonald's because there's no jobs. So you see this line of connecting dots in our economy. Then add to that the GDP, which used to measure steak and people's purchase of steak to show economic health. Then they shifted it to hamburger because people weren't buying as much steak because they couldn't afford to. We have had a degrading economy since the 1950s, since the 1960s. And we've been trying to hide it under all of these different bubbles and balloons. But at some point, the bill comes due. And we're very, very close to that. And so you're pulling the last squares off the bottom of Jenga and praying to God it doesn't collapse on your watch.
I think the problem is that we're all complicit in it, right?
Yep.
In the way that, and we've been forced into this complicity. And let me tell you what I mean. One, this is the way that our country operates. But two, we have also been socialized on credit, right? On fake currency, borrowing but never paying it off. And so now everything is on this, slanted Jenga table, if you will, and just the slightest pull. And for many of us, it's like, charge it, I'll pay it off. Maybe I won't pay it off. Maybe I'll do chapter 7, chapter 13, or whatever the different chapters are. Well, that's what the government's doing, right? So we're doing it. Student loans for education, loans for healthcare, loans for everything.
Mhm.
We're complicit.
Yep. We are, and we have been trained to do that. Now, let's talk about that for a minute because I talk about that extensively in the document. I talk about the fact that we have been manipulated through our education system, through our religious systems, through governmental propaganda. And I call it propaganda because they keep moving the nut. They keep moving the marble under the thing so that we can't really see what our economy is doing. And they do this so that we don't panic and someone says that we're having a great economy. I'm looking around going, homelessness is growing, $15 an hour, $17 an hour jobs are right, but where are the multi-million-dollar jobs? We're selling the same and building the same, engineering the same crap that we've been doing for 40 years, 50 years. We're not really innovating anything new. And we desperately need to be. We need to be adopting new technology. We need to be adopting new jobs. But everybody's holding on to money because they think money is going to save them. When that Jenga tower comes down, it doesn't matter what part of the social status you're in, you're coming down too.
And that's why I say we're complicit, right?
Yep.
And through our discussions here in the last month and a half, kind of shifted things on, because we always talk about we the people, right?
Right.
If it's we the people, then we the people are the ones that are, it's our fault. We're the ones that are accountable because we're allowing it to happen. And so part of it is we've got this double-edged sword of complicity. And the first prong of that sword, or one edge of it, is, hey, you know what? If I just work hard enough, I can rise up the ranks and be sitting pretty like them, right? And the other side of it is, hey, man, I got to tread water because I don't want to fall any deeper. And so you're fighting on both edges of the sword. And so you never just come to the center and just say enough.
So let me change your perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Stop trying to grab the edge of the sword and grab the handle. Grab the hilt.
Well,
that's what the way the people is.
But it's so far away, I can't get my hand out here.
Yeah, well, the hilt is controlled by the people. If we come together, we'll have our hand on the hilt. But we have to come together, otherwise, we're going to be cutting the hell out of our fingers on the edge.
Yeah, no facts.
So people can't see that because we have been, I mean, we don't even teach civics anymore. People have no, okay, I'm just going to say this out loud. The stupidity and ignorance of people about how our government runs is so rampant that it blows my mind. I just look at things people say and I just go, wow, you so don't get it. But here's another piece of that puzzle that actually heartens me. You heard what happened in Ohio, right?
Yes.
Okay, so to catch people up, of those who don't know, Ohio senators and the Republican Party tried to put forward a Proposition 1 that makes it harder to do a constitutional amendment. They're doing this specifically to stop abortion rights people from being able to make a constitutional amendment in Ohio where abortion is legal. Okay? So, and I know people have different ideas about this, but let's stick to the point of they were trying to make a constitutional amendment to make it harder to amend the Constitution of the state to reflect values of the people today. Now, it went down in flames. But here's the other side of it. The campuses, they measured the votes around campuses, and they went as high as 98% against. 98% against. In the next 10 years, the college students are going to be the voting bloc of the world. And they are no matter how conservative they seem to be, they are predominantly far more progressive than the conservatives of today.
You know, what's interesting about you bringing that up is, you talk about how education was for people to be workers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Basically, mindless lemmings and workers. And so what that means is that school is an indoctrination camp. I know I sound
Yeah.
like a radical conservative right now. So if the numbers are that high, then the indoctrination is working just like it should.
No, it's actually failing horribly, and the kids are dissatisfied.
I don't know. I don't think I agree with that. I don't think that there is a lot of diversity of thought right now, hardly anywhere, because there's this cancellation all over the place, right? It's if you don't see it my way, you've got to go. We could talk about Cornel West running for president, and the Democrats losing their stuff over it, knowing that
Losing their minds over it.
yeah. It's going to take votes away and this and that. And the thing is they're not
That's the argument.
seeing.
But the kids are looking at the future, and they're coming out of school with huge debt and a slap in the face of reality that there's nothing for them that's going to help them pay that debt off.
Yeah, but is there? See, I'm caught in the middle, right? So I'm not a boomer, but I'm also not in school age, right? What's that, like a Gen Xer, right? I am a Gen Xer. I'm not a millennial or alpha or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So I'm of two minds on that, right? I'm not so far like the silent generation and the boomers, but I'm not so radically progressive like the youth now today, right? I'm somewhere in the middle, which is I just see great concern on both ends of the spectrum, and that's what I'm seeing. Because at the same time, it's like we can't, you've got all these different things right now, lying flat and quiet quitting and yada yada yada, and it's all a protest. But at the same time, you can check out, but it's still failing, right? You lying flat isn't going to fix it. It's just going to fall on top of you. So you have to do something, right? And so that's my consternation with.
Well, to my point, the youth stepped up and did something to keep it from getting worse.
What they do?
They voted down Proposition 1, making it harder to make a constitutional amendment in the state of Ohio. And I'm looking at that going, that's a positive thing because, as I've said all the way along, what G2 does, what boy, I'm going to completely blow this.
You could just stop at G2. It's fine.
Okay, G2 and the other nonprofits around, what Bailey's group
Oh,
does, what
God's Broken Home,
Christina's group does.
Rock Socks, Socks
Yeah,
Box, Rock the
um,
Block.
Kids Help, yeah, Kids Help, Kids Help Community Resources. All of these people are working very hard to stop the bleeding. They are vitally important to trying to stem the worst of the negativity that has been put in place. You're right. Resilient ecosystems is forward thinking. We're building the foundation on which to build the house on which the future is going to be built. But we can't do that if other people aren't stopping the bleeding.
Well, in your particular example, yes, I agree with you. And I believe that is a super dangerous slope for either side to engage in wanting super majorities, because you might just get what you wish for, right?
Yeah.
So, like you said, okay, if it's at 98%, maybe they say, you know what? Okay, that's fine. You go ahead and do it. And you go ahead and pass it. And the next time it comes up to vote, we're going to vote you out. And the numbers are so overwhelmingly majority, you'll never come back in and have, a seat at the table and your ideas being heard, right? I mean, that's the consequence of basically playing dirty.
Right, and we're seeing that to some degree. And I love how Bo says this: the Republican Party and the far right Republican Party, and the policies they're putting in place, which are so out of touch with us, our mainstream belief systems these days, is the dog who caught the car. Now, what the hell do you do?
I think both sides have that problem.
Yeah. Well, it's true, but in this case, the Supreme Court overturning some things, it's universally unpopular decisions. So you've got that having caught the car. What we're trying for, not to focus on this, what we're trying for is get people to the table and let's talk about it. Let's honestly sit down and talk about what's important to you, and try and keep politics out of it, and try and make focus on food, water, shelter, power, what the future needs, the things that are at risk today for our children tomorrow, if that makes sense.
It does, and at the risk of being verbose,
You?
and not moi. it is all voices at the table, and I know sometimes when you're painting a picture, you're given statistical facts, so it's like, hey, this happened under Nixon and this happened under Reagan, so it might sound like you're Republican bashing, and you're not. So
No.
it's important that
well, let me paint the other side of that picture.
Well, hold on. Let me just finish the sentence.
Okay.
The workshops are for everyone, right? It's
Yes.
not going to work if everyone doesn't bring their puzzle piece. If it's just a progressive puzzle piece, it's not going to work. We really have to have the collective and come together on the things that we can agree on. Go ahead.
Absolutely. And let me do the other side of that one for a moment. Under Bill Clinton, who is undeniably a Democrat, with the help of Alan Greenspan, who was the head of the Fed at that point, they worked with Congress to overturn Glass-Steagall. Glass-Steagall was a law put in place after the Depression to prevent the Depression and the scope of things that happened to prevent the Depression from ever happening again. And they decided in their ultimate wisdom in 1998 that we were so far in advance and so far in our humanity that would never happen again, so we could take those protections away. 9 years later, we had a giant recession that I will call a depression because it is my personal opinion that we had a depression that we have never truly come out of. And it's only going to continue to get worse because it's a giant Jenga game and we're pulling the last logs out. So, yeah, there was Reagan and there was Nixon, but there was Clinton as well, who did the same thing, who damaged the economy. And there is no one side here that is blameless.
And we're kind of political, so I'm going to go there. It's my turn now. Okay. So, the thing that frustrates me about progressives in the Democratic Party, right, is, whatever you feel about Trump, if you feel that he needs to be tried for January 6th and everything else, so be it. But right now, that's all I hear. And we're not working in the solution, right? And it's almost that this boogeyman is really turning off a lot of voters who typically vote Democrat, right? And they're seeing that now, especially with black men, right? They're polling and they're seeing that's one demographic, but Hispanics are another group that are shifting away from the Democratic Party. And we have to, it's like, okay, if that's what needs to happen because he broke the law, go ahead, try him, and
That's
do
called the
whatever.
justice system.
But this is all that is being covered right now. And we have
Yeah.
all these issues that need to be solved. And while this is happening, you've got BlackRock and everyone else buying up all these homes. You have homelessness exploding, and it's Trump, Trump, Trump. Like, I don't want to hear about Trump anymore.
Well, that's the distraction. You've heard me say, and I'm going to pull out of this for a second and just say this so clearly because you made a great example. This is the noise that we
Mhm.
get broadcast at us 24/7 that keeps us distracted from the shells moving around and figuring out where the P is. Oh, look at Trump. Oh, I lost it. Where did it go? And as long as that keeps moving, we don't see the collapse coming because we're too busy paying attention to all the noise. But remember, media companies are owned by corporations. Okay?
Yeah.
So they're going for clicks. I mean, at the very least, they're going for clicks and trying to get you to pay attention to what they're doing without actually giving any news. And we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I look at the Guardian. I look at some independent and very unbiased online sources who do a lot of good research. And when I say that, I'm not saying, oh, they said they were, and they're. I do the actual. I actually do
I
go
believe
look at
you.
all of the source material and get the data. And it takes a while before I'll trust that somebody is actually doing unbiased reporting and covering a wide swath of things that I really want to know about and need to know about.
Well, one thing that you need to know about that folks aren't going to necessarily hear in a paper is this.
Not
Talking
our
to
paper.
at least four different people, and I'm included in that. We have not been able to get our medicine in a timely manner. One of my meds was out for over 10 days. Another person could not get their diabetes injection medicine for more than a week. Another person couldn't get their heart medicine for over, well, it's been like 3 days. This is I'm hearing these stories more and more. And when you talk about being cut off from a food, you know,
Oh, trust
perspective,
me,
we're not
trust me.
talking about life sustaining medicine.
We have had this conversation internally a lot of times. We have talked to naturopaths in the area about possibly growing herbs that can be used to mitigate some of this in the case of a cascadia. But everybody's so focused on making money, and they want to sell the prepackaged stuff from China that they already have, that they aren't looking at ways to manufacture it here. So why me? Why should I be bothered with doing this? Because when shit hits the fan, and I'm just going to say that, we will need to have something to mitigate the devastation of people not being able to get their diabetes meds, people not being able to get their heart meds, people not being able to get the things that they need to live.
Really, really imagine it. First off, our medicine is being manufactured in China, which is terrifying. Good majority of it. But imagine being cut off and not having those medicines, right? Things that it, people, you're not alive if you don't have that medicine, but also your mental health isn't there if you don't have that medicine. And we find ourselves in crisis and people are unraveling because some of these things you can't cold turkey off of.
Yep.
We're going to have, I mean, just really think about it, folks.
Yeah. I mean, this is
It's
just one
scary.
of, okay, so this is the world I live in. This is where this document came from. And in the 66 pages, I can't put all of the things we've addressed.
Right.
Um, I'm writing a book that when it finally gets done, will have a lot of it in it. But these are things that we have to be at the table to talk about because our lives depend on it. This is the puzzle piece you bring. If you come to me and want to sit down with a group of people and you say, I cannot live without my X med, then we need to talk about how to find a way to mitigate it. Now, again, meds have a short lifespan, so you can't backlog them. But the pharmaceutical industry, who is, by the way, the largest or second largest now lobby group in Washington, D.C., which is why we do not have universal medicine, because they would lose billions of dollars from not being able to jack U.S. people up on the prices of medicine. Um, and that's not an opinion, that's just math. Um, but they have worked it so that the pharmacies here work on a just in time model, which means that they just have enough medicine to not backlog it or have to order anything new for the need of the people. If that need increases, they don't have enough. If the need increases exponentially, like during a disaster, they certainly won't have enough. So
And I don't
this
know if
is
there are people that have lived through, Katrina and was that Oso and some of the other, well, I mean, we have tornadoes all the
Sandy,
time, right?
Sandy, which took out a lot of New York and flooded the subways.
Yeah, I can't imagine what it's like to live through that, but then I really couldn't imagine what it's like to live through that and need medicine and can't get it, or have a loved one who needs that medicine, whether it's a child or an elder or whatever the case
Or
may
a
be.
spouse.
And it's so hard to just survive at that point, but this person is literally dying or
Yes,
suffering, right? And it's just
absolutely.
hard enough to try to get enough food, eat, shelter, safety. You know, it's crazy, and we
It
just we
is.
just don't. We're so resilient in say a woman in her cycle or pregnancy, right? They bounce back and they're so resilient, and most men are like, yeah, there's no way, we're too weak to go through that stuff, right? Which is
so,
true. Like, thank God I was born a man. I
so
don't want to be pregnant. I don't want to have a cycle. But
yeah. So let me just put it to you this way: we make it, we allow it to be made so hard for ourselves. Life does not need to be this hard. And I'm not trying to sell you a program of workshops where, I come in and smile really big and tell you how your life will be better if you just do these things and everything else. No, what I'm telling you is we need to come together, discuss why it's hard, understand that, and then come together and put the information on the table, all of the cards face up, so that we can figure out a way to leverage whatever we need to make it less hard for everybody. And to clear the table, because I really want people to understand this, and Marwan made a good point. People may think I'm a progressive Democrat. I'm not. Um, I'm not a conservative Republican either. I am a devout humanist. I don't give a damn about politics. What I care about is humanity. What I care about is finding ways to survive the next century and have a thriving humanity at the end. And I see ways we can do that. But I don't have a magic wand. And my superpower is seeing it and putting those pieces together. Your superpower is bringing your problems and your issues to the table so that we can talk about it and find a solution together.
well, let me ask you. If we can digress like 5 or 10 minutes before, but I wanted to just ask. In the ticker below, it says, "What are the solutions?" And those that are listening, feel free to type in the chat if you have some. But let's say that you had a magic wand that wasn't all powerful, but it had some level of power. What can we do immediately and tangibly to start to reverse course on some of these things?
Okay, so first thing that we need to have is data, because the lack of data is astonishing. I mean, we have so many water districts here, and nobody seems to have a pulse about what our water tables are doing in Kitsap County, which are on that. So we need data. We need to know what water we have and have a solid look at it so we can make some decisions. We need to stop immediately building multi-million dollar plants, or $100 million plants or more, to centrally distribute water and power and everything else. We need to start looking at local solutions. Immediately, we need to start. Okay, you want the very first thing?
Hmm.
Grow a garden. Get your neighbors together and garden. Grow tomatoes. I mean, it's only 3 or 4 months a year, but you can can them, you can preserve them, you can dehydrate them, and you'll have food for the rest of the year. You want it to be secure? Get your food security down. Grow a garden. Support local farms by going to farmers markets and use the CSA program. But come to the table and we can do magical things. And the wand becomes all powerful as we put grow centers in Kitsap County and start creating an entirely new industry where we can create 1,000 jobs in food security virtually overnight. These are instant solutions. Housing solutions. We need to not only look at the fact that we have unhoused and that we look at the expanding rents. We need to come together and say, no, we're done with this now. This is the new model, and we can put regulations in place to prevent this from happening. What is lacking is the will, not the means. So you want housing solutions? Come together.
All right. Justin says
yeah.
some people do not have yards, or if they do, they are not allowed to have gardens, which is a very true statement. I think we were talking about this last week, right?
Right.
Am I surprised?
But coming together, we can find places. Okay, we have Blueberry. That's not anywhere near enough, and it's a Bremerton State Park or a Bremerton City Park. We can find other places. Marwan, you're on the auditing committee. How much land does Bremerton have that is unused?
Oh, well, I couldn't give you those numbers, unfortunately. I don't know exactly. I couldn't even give you a
ballpark. More than an acre.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay. So I'm not saying we use that, but the Kitsap County Parks Department, they have acres of property they cannot use for one reason or another, parking or access or whatever else. There are places where we can garden, and we can put gardens in various areas, so we can address that. But we have to have people come together and push the need.
Well, and I think that's one. The other one is, why do they not allow gardens in the yards? I think that's a good question, right? Is that a policy? Is that a city policy or ordinance that was passed? Is that a personal preference from landlords?
In our units, we can't do anything permanent to the yards. We can't grow. We have to have lawns, which, by the way, are brown because we can't water them now, and our unit doesn't want a lawn, so we have brown dirt and weed in the front lawn because we're not allowed to actually water them, and we're not allowed to actually grow anything else there. This is the property managers decide these things, but we can change that with enough people.
Justin also says housing solution would be disallow Airbnb, abolish hotels and motels. We have more than enough houses currently.
Huh. I'd like to talk, Justin, again, please join us for Saturday coffee. I'd love to have, eminent domain. Yeah, but that again needs people coming together. You're not going to be able to push that without a significant. Okay, Justin said we can eminent domain for garden solutions, but there are powerful capitalists that do not allow that. It's not that they don't allow it; they find ways to put in regulations against it, or permitting, or zoning, and those can all be changed by enough people come together. Understand. You want to know a political solution? Bring people together. That's a political solution.
Well, an eminent domain can be used in a really good way.
Yeah.
And so in your unit, and I'm giving ideas here. So for those of you that are like, oh man, that guy wants to take your property, for Viewcrest, right? Whatever entity owns that, because it's a commercial property out of this state, right? It's like, look, it's eminent domain. The city's going to buy this property, or if you want to keep it, then this is how it's going to be, right? We have gardens here in this city, in this county, and that's just the way that it is. So if you want to own something here, then that's how it's going to be. But I think we should sunset that and say no more commercial developers, and we need to internalize that and build our own housing here, which of course would be
So
job creation, trades creation. It would help the college out through welders and electricians and everything else, right? We can even bring plumbing into OC and some other things because they're also, suffering with enrollments. So there's a lot of different things that can feed the ecosystem on many different levels, but that would be one of those things that I would have the idea for. So I do believe that eminent domain can work. And what Justin is saying here, in policy, that's how they do not allow it. And so that is where we,
policy
the
changes
people,
with people.
right, is you elect people that want to look into and change those things, but understand. And I was just having this conversation with someone the other day. There have been so many times when folks have gotten their person elected and felt like they won, and that was it. And they walked away and they said, okay, now change things. That's when the work really starts, right? Because if you're not going to show up to city council, if you're not going to write your political officials, if you're not going to make your voice heard through public comment, then it's just that one voice against the other six or whatever it looks like, saying no, 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 business as usual, right?
Okay,
So
so
you
let me let
have
me
to
let me
be
give a
heard.
great example of this.
Sure.
And I'm going to go back to Obama's first presidency. When he was running, he said, "Yes, we can." But when he won, that exact same thing happened. Everybody thought we won and left it alone, and there was no we anymore. And that is what happens. We are part of the process in continuity. We have to be part of it and present all the way through, where nothing is going to change. It's not one protest and then go home and sit in your armchair and watch the show. That's not how this works.
To that end, should we have something that happens here? And I'm not necessarily against protest, but there are going to be things that holding a sign up and standing in the middle of the street is not going to fix. And
Most
should,
things.
should
All it
it be
does is piss some
Cascadia
people off.
Rising?
Yep.
Protesting isn't going to get you fed. You know,
No, but sitting at the table and coming together can get you all kinds of changes, and they will be permanent changes because the application is there. So let's talk about that same model for a moment about eminent domain and or regulation. How about and if you look at the document and it'll be released to the public as soon as my board says it's okay to do so. They have not yet. Um, in there, we talk about a company out of, and I don't think they exist anymore because they got buried by the large companies, called Aquionics out of South Carolina. And they developed a house sized wastewater treatment plant that would literally process all of the wastewater in your neighborhood and can bring it back up to potable water. So
mm,
it's recycling the water. And they're fairly inexpensive compared to what we've spent on wastewater treatment plants and upgrading. We upgraded the Brownsville plant about 6 years ago or so. It cost $60 million. You could build one of these for I think five or under, and they're
really?
highly automated. And we should be demanding that developers put something like that in every neighborhood they build.
Mm,
But we won't because, oh my God, the developers will say no and go somewhere else and we won't get the money. They use fear of leaving to keep power and to maximize their profit and not have to put any money in. They don't pay for the wastewater treatment expansion that is necessary for all the neighborhoods coming in. We do. They have no responsibility for the infrastructure that is required to put in their businesses for Amazon and or the I'm going to use the ballparks in Seattle and or neighborhoods here. They don't spend money for the infrastructure. They make money and leave. They have no responsibility.
Justin says it is the same fear they say about raising taxes.
And
They
with the
will
same
move
amount of
away.
honesty behind it. None.
Yeah, move away, be gone. And that's really my feeling on it. We've
We'll bring
outsourced.
our homegrown. We'll bring our own homegrown people up to do the work
Yeah,
and
we've
create jobs
outsourced
locally.
so much stuff. We've made ourselves. I mean, we're just at the whim of whatever happens, right? Natural
Yep.
or man-made. It's tremendously concerning.
So yeah, and as we're coming close to the end of our time, I just want to say that this is all fixable, but you have to show up. And I will tell you that it's a little disconcerting to invite people to coffee every week and be sitting at the table by myself for an hour and a half. Workshop started up last week. Terry and I were there 20 minutes and then packed up and left. Show up.
You might have to do a survey, Mark, and change your time. Like, you know, I can't make it on Saturdays. I know Justin, when I saw him, Justin
It
works
works.
on Saturdays.
Yep.
So you have folks that are definitely want to be a part of the conversation, are always tuning in, and so I think the time frame may not work.
So
So,
reach out to us on Resilient Ecosystems Facebook page and tell us, what your roadblock is, and
well, what
we
I'm
will work
saying
with
is
it.
maybe do a doodle poll or a survey,
Okay.
right? Because again, and that's always my issue with when you and I have conversation is the scaffolding piece, right? It's like, well, it
Yeah.
sounds good and I'd like to come, but folks aren't going to make that extra leap to say, hey, I can't come on Saturdays, but I'm available Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, you know, or
And if
Sundays.
they would, we could work with them.
Right, but I'm saying people
Yeah.
aren't there yet, and so we have to meet people where they're at, right?
Right.
And so you said you're the visionary, you have the foresight in that. So understanding where their tripping points are, you have to say, you know what, this isn't working. Let me put out a survey and see how this works,
Yep.
or
Well, I tell
should
you
we
what,
do?
I'm in the process of completely redoing the web page. So why don't I put a survey on the workshop page?
I love it. And Justin is right. It is hard for working class people to get out. And one of the things I don't
And
know if
that's, by the way, that's part of the trap.
it is part of the trap, and I don't know if this is feasible to do, but I think one of the hidden gems of COVID was Zoom, right?
Yep.
And you can say it's a gift and a curse because now all people do is just Zoom to Zoom to Zoom. I go from one Zoom to the next oftentimes, but it has been a situation where it has made things like city council more accessible to people to participate in democracy. And so maybe there's a way to do this also where we can set it up where there's a hybrid. I think you and I presented to Kiwanis. We
No,
presented
Rotary.
to the
Rotary.
Rotary, and they had people that were there presently and also there on Zoom, and then someone like Justin or myself can at least tap in if we physically couldn't get down there, and for some people it is definitely a hardship,
So,
right?
so let me put a straw poll out right now, since Justin's online and there might be a few other people watching.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be interested? Would you be interested if Marwan and I put together a workshop series on Google Classroom?
Ooh, my
And
11-year-old showed
silence.
me Google Classroom, by the way.
Huh?
My 11-year-old showed me Google Classroom.
Yep. And maybe she'll just direct it for us, and she knows what how it works.
She's pretty remarkable. Like,
Yep.
you're pretty amazing, kid.
Has she come back? Has she put the green braids back?
No, not yet.
Oh, okay.
But school's getting ready to start. I don't know what color she's gonna go with yet.
Yeah,
But with
those are,
gymnastics now, the regulation for her hair and so yeah, it's just a lot of moving pieces.
yep. Okay, so last word, Marwan.
The last word is, you know what? I'm gonna encourage you to make your own manifesto the way that Mark did. Yes, it was 66 pages. It was a lot of work. It took a lot of time, but it's a great exercise in really getting down what's important to you, what your value set is, what you think needs to happen, how those things can happen, and bring that puzzle piece to the table, right? There's so much inside of each one of us. Justin spoke about imminent domain, right? And I'm thinking about imminent domain, and we're thinking about it in different ways. But that's just me. But now it's Justin, and now it's Justin and Marwan. Now it's Justin, Marwan, and Mark, and that's how those things start to come to pass, right?
Yep.
And even though we're busy and we can't always get somewhere, write down and journal some of these conversations that we're having about what the problems are, what the potential solutions are, because those are things that you can submit also. Like, I can't physically be there, but I can give you this. I can't physically be at the workshops, but I try my damnedest to be here this hour every week to bring my puzzle piece, right? And so those things are important. Justin comes and is in the chat, right, bringing their puzzle piece. So those things are important. Bring your piece in whatever capacity that it is. Be hopeful, but be urgent. Be hopeful, but be urgent. We can't rest on our laurels. We cannot wait for other people to solve the issues. We have to roll up our sleeves and do it now with a sense of urgency.
Absolutely. And Justin said he deleted Facebook, so I have one last question for him. What mediums do you use? Because I predominantly use Facebook because it allows me to advertise the events that we have.
I'm laughing because you are like-minded individuals. Mark hates Facebook also.
God, and it gets worse every time I have to use it. They
You
are
know,
not
and that,
making it easier.
and let me just say this to the two of you. I understand that there are, for you, Mark, it's both ways, right? It's not only just the people at Meta and the corporation and their issues and what they do, but it's also the nasty people that are on there. Justin is probably
I
the
don't.
nasty people that are on there. But
I
what I
don't. I
implore you
don't
to
have.
do,
I don't have any nasty people because I spend my time screwing with the algorithm to make sure that they don't come to my page.
right? Well, what I'm saying is I just implore you to. This is the tool that is there. There are some ways, Justin, that you can block those folks out, but we also want to just go ahead and get rid of, because I'll block. I really don't block anyone. I don't think I have blocked anyone.
I have
I'm
a
a
couple
different breed
hundred.
in that. Bring it on.
Yeah.
But um, you can filter out, and then you can decide what you're gonna take on and what you're going to ignore. And enough of a bad thing will have some kind of impact, but take power over it, right? I claim power over this platform. It's a necessary evil. It's a tool that works great for a lot of people, for a lot of families, a lot of elders to stay in touch and yada yada yada. There are good parts of it, and so just stay in the good parts and ignore the bad parts. I just implore you to do that. A lot of times we'll get rid of resources that can make our lives easier or help us come together, and I think that's part of the trick too. You know.
It's a matter of controlling the source, and I work very hard every day at it. But
Absolutely.
but in the end, I prefer just to meet people face on. And I'm kind of jealous that you met Marwan at Pride. I was there as well, but we missed each other.
That's because I'm awesome. You know
Well,
what I'm
yeah,
saying?
you are.
Well, thank you. You are too. All right. Well,
Okay.
that is the final word. We will be back. Let's see. Let me just check here. We will not have our 3:00 as I don't have a confirmation. We do have a new housing coordinator for the county. He actually has a larger title, but that's Carl Borg. And there is a new Matt Garrett who is working for the housing program at KCR. And his name, if I can find it really quick, is, and they were both invited to be on the housing podcast here at 3 p.m. And I did not hear back from either one. So we will see if we can get them for next month. And I'm just going to the, hold on there. Just bear with me, folks. Sorry about that. The executive director of KCR sent me a text with the new person. John Nickerson is the new KCR housing person. So it was Matt Garrett. Then it was, oh boy, I'm just really.
It's okay. We got the new guy. We got John Nickerson.
Yes, it is. It is John. Yeah, I might as well not even say that. Carla Foster. Sorry about that. Names are important. I'm just horrible at them. But you should also know that, because there's a lot of you that watch that use those resources. And so when there are changes and you have no idea what's happening, or there's a gap in communication from their side, you need to know that. Anyhow, we'll be back here at 5:00 for the study session for the Bremerton City Council. For Mark Boatwright Frost, I am Marwan Cameron. This is Tipping Points and Puzzle Pieces, episode number 76. This is The Conduit. We'll see you next week.
1, 2, 3, 4.